including the way that you think, the way that you're feeling. So, you know, just keep that in mind, that it's an injury to everything, our whole being, not just mental health, but also our physical well-being and our spirituality as well. So trauma is caused by extraordinary events that can be distressing, that can be disturbing, and completely shake us from our core, right? So it's something that it can overwhelm the individual, and it can challenge our ability to be able to cope with that event and also other events as they come. War, as we know, is a huge cause of trauma. Sexual violence, natural disasters, torture, racism, other forms of historical injustices, poverty, child abuse, spousal abuse, life-threatening illnesses, and facing death, whether it's somebody that you love or even your own. And so I wanted to emphasize that trauma can also happen in the absence of war and conflict. But to add war and conflict to the issues that we deal with on a daily basis obviously elevates that. So South Sudanese as a community, we have been living in war, born in war, dying in war, and we're going. And that means that all, if not, you know, most, if not all South Sudanese are suffering from some form or some level of trauma. So the impact of conflict and all the accompanying vulnerabilities, you know, we go into conflicts, there's violence, there's loss of life, there's, you know, injuries to bodies, people are being displaced, there is famine, excessive, you know, sexual violence, there's breakdown of community and family structures as well. So this compounds our community. So we can sort of assume wholly, you know, in absence of more evidence that everyone in South Sudan is dealing from trauma. Everyone from above, you know, from up all the way down, from the highest level to the, you know, political, military, all the way to a regular person is dealing from trauma. And because of all of these, you know, all of this being prolonged, you know, ongoing sexual violence, as we can see, is, you know, a huge topic these days. We have killings of people, loss of life. We have COVID-19, a lot of loss. People are, you know, we're on Facebook, we're online, we're getting all this information about things going on globally, locally, and it can be quite overwhelming. So we have a serious problem, and it's a problem that everyone is dealing with globally because we're all in unprecedented and uncharted waters at the moment. So the stress will be coming up, and prolonged stress and trauma leads to also stress-related chronic illnesses. And we will notice this in South Sudan. I started to notice this a few years ago with people of a young age developing type 2 diabetes, ulcers, high blood pressure, heart problems, also, you know, other gastric issues as well, including cancers. And all of this eventually leads to death. So trauma unprocessed and unmanaged is a very serious thing. And trauma is displayed in a number of different ways. So different individuals deal with trauma in a different way, or respond to trauma and traumatic events differently. But there are common threads. So if you're in a traumatic event and you're coming, you know, experiencing trauma, you would feel overwhelmed, helpless, a diminished sense of self, you know, your own purpose, why you're there, why you're alive. You also can get a feeling of an inability to move through the emotions. You're always stuck in one emotion. So if sadness is your thing, then you feel depression. Sadness, extreme sadness leads to depression. Extreme anxiety leads to paranoia. Extreme anger leads to hostility, and joy leads to hysteria. We're human beings, and we're supposed to experience a range of emotions even in one day. So it's also about bringing the awareness in yourself about how you're changing as the events are happening externally. We're also changing internally and biologically. So we also get, with trauma, altered sleep. We hear a lot of people from people that we know, people suffering from nightmares, lack of sleep, you never feel rested, you're exhausted. Some people feel completely withdrawn. They don't want to talk to anybody. They lock themselves in their room. Other people show, emotional outbursts. You just lash out all the time. And also substance abuse. People use alcohol, other forms of drugs as a way to cope. And then obviously it's not a productive way of dealing with trauma and stress. So it becomes an abuse. So it's overdone. And I really believe that trauma is a huge factor in our cycles of violence in South Sudan, because violence is used as a way to deal with every single problem that we have. It just indicates that it's become habitual. And when something is habitual, it is mindless, as opposed to mindful. And mindful breathing, mindful living, mindful eating is something that we talk about in trauma healing, because every opportunity provides us with, every minute provides us with an opportunity to change how we behave and to change how we respond to a specific situation. I think a lot of us are, privy to situations where something small, a small disagreement, can lead to something completely huge in a matter of minutes. We go from 1 or 0 to 1,000 very quickly, because our emotions are linked to our biology. So in mind-body medicine, we also teach that our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs all affect our physical emotions. If you look at someone and you feel anger towards them, your body is going to react. You're going to have, high heart rate, faster heart rate, breathing shallow. You just feel a lot of emotions and a lot of physical things happening in your body, because everything is related. So if we think about that, we also find the opportunities, which is to use our bodies as well to change how we think, to change how we feel, and change our the attitudes that we have. So, in trauma healing, we like to focus also on the things that, our bodies are made to heal. We are hardwired to survive. We're hardwired to heal. So all of this is available in our bodies. And if you notice children already come with this. So we came with this. A child bursts with their emotions as soon as they feel it. As an adult, you learn not to do that. You learn to keep everything in and down, and you have to be calm and collected, or you have a certain perspective about you. So if you also notice how a child breathes, they breathe into their belly. They breathe deep and slow, and this brings a calming effect. So when they're sleeping, you see their bellies breathing, going up and down. This is how we should breathe as adults as well. So this is also the lessons that we can learn from Mother Nature. We have everything we need in our body. So this is a very hopeful thing. So in our cycles of violence, we need to deal with trauma. And if we don't deal with trauma, we'll keep going in the cycle. And the cycle, violence causes more trauma, more traumatized people creating more harm. And there is, every person that has been traumatized. You know, people have gone through trauma, but everyone who abuses has been through some form of trauma, but not everyone who's been abused will cause trauma. So in that, you know, we also have to look at our country and understand that we are products of our environment and products of our history. And we always, you know, we can always try and bring an element of compassion to the things that are happening, because we have to break the cycle of violence. And when you think of, because the biological implications of trauma means that the parts of our brains, some parts of our brains get overactive. And those parts can be the ones that produce fear, anger, and our inability to think, you know, for decision making. And it also decreases the parts of the brain to do with judgment and empathy. So it's hard to feel for somebody else. It's hard to connect with someone else. But these are the things that also we can start to notice about what trauma does to our bodies and our brains, and just to bring that awareness into it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about hope and the power of hope. We use the power of hope intensely in mind-body medicine, because when we start going into the trauma healing, once you understand that, you know, our reactions, our traumatic reactions, our mental health challenges are normal and are justifiable within the context that we're living, you know, with the things that we're dealing with the number of losses in our community, with the number of deaths because of COVID-19, because of our lack of certainty for when we can do things, when we can travel, when work can start, when life can sort of, you know, become more understandable. All of these contribute to just the stress and the lack of hope. But when we understand that all of this is there, all of this is for a reason, all of this is for a purpose, and all of this need to take a minute to understand what is happening and to understand what we can do. So we use several techniques in mind-body medicine. The breath is the first. The breath in many languages means life and spirit. So the breath is really important. And we do breathing into the belly to calm our system, because the oxygen triggers our brain to bring us back to calm and homeostasis. And every time you breathe, I don't know if you would like me to breathe with you at the moment so that you can feel what I'm trying to demonstrate. You can nod if you would like. Yeah. Okay. So whoever's here, if you could just, you know, sit comfortably, sit straight with your back straight, feet flat on the ground. And as you shift, always notice that sometimes we don't sit comfortably. We sit in a way that produces tension in our body. So take a deep breath in through your nose and out through the mouth. Close your eyes if you're comfortable, because it blocks out external stimulation. And just notice your breath. Taking slow, deep breath through the nose and out through the mouth. And you're focusing on your belly being soft and round, just like a baby when they're breathing. Breathe in and out. Notice your body relax. as you take each breath. The oxygen helps to reach every cell and calm the body, make your brain know that everything is fine. If thoughts come, you allow them to come because they'll come, and then you let them go. And you return yourself to your soft belly. Breathing like this can be uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's a very relaxing way to breathe. Let's take 2 more deep breaths. And 1 more. You can open your eyes when you're ready. You can show me your hands if you felt any deeper relaxation. Did you feel some relaxation? Great.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very simple technique. When you are waiting for something, when you have just any minute, when you wake up before you go to sleep, any moment you notice that you have time and you're feeling some sort of anxiety or tired or anything, breathe. Breathe. Because we, in this situation, have really learned, our environment, even without conflict, even without COVID-19, was already highly stressful. Work, social media, community or challenges or isolation, our lack of movement, all of these contribute to our system basically not working in its efficient way. And so there are 4 things really that I would advise people to try and focus on when trying to understand and navigate their emotions. So the first is a cycle of awareness where you notice. And it's important to notice because if you think about something that happened in the past that's challenging, then you don't want it to affect everything in the future. And that's exactly what trauma does. So notice awareness. To be aware is the first step to being able to do something. So awareness, expression, and expression comes in many forms in mind-body medicine, which is the model of the trauma healing that I use. Expression can be drawing, can be talking, can be sharing, can be movement and dancing, and it can be writing. So expression and then relax. And then another emotion comes up, confused or concerned, and then or joyful or excited, river. So when we notice that we're stuck in one emotion, whether we're always sad or always worried or always angry, then we need to understand that these are patterns of overstress and possibly trauma. So the 4 things would be breathing, movement. And one of the things that really drew me to Center for Mind-Body Medicine was their use of movement and lessons from indigenous communities all over the world, including Africa. And so in the movement, what we do is something called shaking and dancing. And it totally took me to the traditional dances of South Sudan, the way that we dance traditionally in Africa, where we shake our bodies, where we're really using a lot of energy, that is a very powerful way to dispel any feelings, any heavy feelings that you're feeling. And I would suggest doing a shaking movement for in the morning. It gives you a lot of energy. The third would be nature. Go outside. Go outside, look at the birds, breathe the clean air, breathe air, you know, notice the water, give thanks to everything that supports our life. You know, we've got the sun that is certainly always there, you know, rising and setting. We have the birds in the sky who seem completely oblivious to the things that are happening. We are a bigger life source than we know. So we always have to connect with other forms of life. You know, the trees give us the oxygen that bring us back to homeostasis, that give us the life that we live. So we need to enjoy nature and go outside and just be able to take yourself out of the head section, bring yourself to the body, bring yourself also to the surroundings that we have. And the fourth one, I would say, would be community, which is another beautiful thing about the Center for Mind Body's model, because it's all based on community. And I'm really stuck on that as well, because this is what I've noticed, sort of the trajectory of how our communities went from conflict, for, you know, a conflict that could be considered a just war, to a conflict that's considered an unjust war. The lack of hope and the breakdown of community have all contributed to the fact that we are in ourselves and in our essence not as stable and as balanced as we can be. So we can use our communities, you know, our families, even if, you know, people living in Juba, I know things are, or anywhere in South Sudan, all over the world, you know, as a community, as a family, get together, put some music on, shake and dance, you know, for 10 minutes straight. You don't have to talk. You don't even have to look at each other. Just close your eyes and feel the energy, because all of these hormones get released that help us to process things and also help to bring balance to our minds and our bodies and our spirits. So call a friend, reach out. You know, it's hard because of the physical distancing that we have to do, but there are ways to get together to be able to sit far so that you can connect. We are social beings, despite, you know, the advancements we've made and people are living alone. You know, I live in Mozambique with my husband and daughter, and it doesn't seem right. And it's not easy because I grew up in a big family. I grew up with, you know, cousins and aunties and all of that. And that also contributed to my well-being. And so as we need to understand, and I also find this a beautiful thing, because it's a lot of validation for the things that we do as people and as a community, you know, living together in family, using our bodies, eating well as well. So, you know, the diet is also very, very important. You know, when you become stressed, you can either overeat or undereat, you know, so you have to notice all of these patterns. And the more you deal with stress, for instance, if you're having an appetite issue, which if you're having an appetite issue, is breathe, move your body. Basically, we need to be able to shift things until we come back to balance. And I wanted to mention one thing that's kind of been like a personal challenge right now is, you know, things have been quite hectic and heavy for some time. You know, I lost my father 7 months ago. And since then, even before then, it was a lot of loss and things like that. But since then, obviously, it's been more last month, over the last 2 months, there's a lot of things. And in this time where there's stuff going on globally, you know, pandemic wise, There is, the racial injustices that's coming up and causing a lot of emotion worldwide, problems in South Sudan, problems within the region. All of these things can really overwhelm a person. And so for me, I've been trying to balance being connected, and being well as well, because it's the balance that we need to strike. Because you don't want to be constantly online, constantly following things to the point where you just get completely overwhelmed and you're unable to deal with it in your own body and in yourself. And the funny thing is with trauma also, because everyone is going through something, you feel like you can't call and burden somebody else. But that's actually quite, the opposite, because we need each other. So, and then on top of that, if you think, let me just shut myself off from everything that's happening and be well, it's also out of the balance, because we have to be able to connect. I need to know, for instance, how well people are. I need to feel the emotions. And this is the thing that we try to teach in mind body medicine as well, is that we must feel the extent and the full extent and the full range of our emotions. So when we do that, we can live our full life. But if you cut yourself off as well completely for the sake of being well, you also block a lot of emotions from your life again. But it is a delicate balance, to know what's going on and to be there for people and for people to be there for you, and to, not take everything in, so that energy and the heaviness also does not weigh on your one person. So these are the things that, we need to keep in mind, the challenges of the day. I also I'm here just if you have any questions that have arisen. Talk too much about different things. Obviously the information is broad, and I would like to hear your opinions and your experiences as well. Thanks, Adeng.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anyet. This was really beneficial, and it's really good for our health, our well-being, and everything. You have mentioned almost everything, and I can see somebody raised his hand. But before I take you, Mr. Scholl, I would like to ask, what do you think of the current situation in South Sudan? What did you identify as the lack of trauma post-conflict trauma healing, or the current situation? For example, I would like to mention that there is a campaign that is going on among us women for survivors of sexual gender-based violence. So do you think this will help us coming out? And what do you think that South Sudan need to do in terms of trauma healing? Because we have gone through a lot of, experience of war, and now the pandemic, and there's so many things that is happening, economic situation, social issues and community issues, and so on. So I would like to take that point from you on what is your experience on identifying the lack, and what do you think can be done in terms of this issue?
Thanks, Adeng. Well, we have a lot of problems in South Sudan. And as I mentioned, I really believe that trauma is one of the causes, the main thread in all of this. And so with every sexual violence incident comes a whole range of trauma, especially for the victim, who also, if we don't have the right interventions for the victims, leads to other things, including, just self-destructive behavior and things like that, because of the events. So I would suggest, in terms of you know, the work that is happening right now in terms of sexual violence is always to bring in trauma healing into it. You know, we have enough victims in South Sudan. We have enough victims, we have enough martyrs, we have all of these things. And it seems the numbers doesn't really, you know, do not really impact. Like there's no limit, there's no limited number. All we're just driven by the trauma that we're feeling. We're driven by the answers that we think will bring the solution. And it's really sad, you know, but there's hope. And in it as well, I find, you know, as a human rights activist, like I've worked in human rights, like even before getting into human rights, I think studying it itself was a cause of some of my trauma, my personal trauma. And so working in this situation as well, we always have to be mindful of how it impacts us as people who are working and advocating on those situations. And so, you know, in Mind Body, we try also every time to teach Mind Body, I have to go through the whole experience. And because I've been through the experience, I can teach it. And because I have, you know, I'm gonna start again. So to heal is to constantly work through the things that we're going through. And so somehow down the line, we need to be able to break this cycle of violence that's all related and all compounded because we keep perpetuating the same things. And at the same time, we never heal from that. And so, you know, trauma healing for victims of sexual violence is so important. Trauma healing for people dealing with that is also important because of how advocating for such a thing can burn one out and also not prolong the situation, but it's just, everything has to come together, you know? So for in the situation of, you know, those people who are working on this, the issues that are rising at the moment, there has to be trauma healing in it so that we can get somewhere. So we can actually get somewhere, results, and start to break the violence.
Wow, thank you so much. And thank God we are recording this conversation so that people will be able to, you know, to listen to these kind of, you know, of proposals and solutions that you have made. And I would like to give the opportunity to Mr. Scholl to come in just briefly to say what you want to say or contribute or ask a question. You're welcome, Mr. Scholl.
Yeah, thank you, Adeng, and many thanks to Anyet for the wonderful, you know, presentation. I have gone through a few things as a journalist for human rights. I have encountered very many similar things that actually of this kind of violence that causes trauma. I've just seen recently that there has been campaigns by people of women and girls about rape and all that. And one thing that I've seen which is too negative about this is most of these people were actually raped by close people that are maybe relatives, let me put it that way. And when you come out publicly, you know, against a relative and say, you know, so-and-so raped me, that's two things. One, the person will never do something related to that again. And it will be, you know, someone that is known by public for doing bad things. Two, you don't know what happens to you next because in the same family, you expose someone that has been mistreating you and raping you and doing a lot of bad things to you for a long period of time. But you say, no, enough is enough. I'm going to tell the public that this is too much. You don't know what happens next. It beats you, does that to you. What happens is you and your family. So that is the negative part about it. Another group of people that I have identified who are very much traumatized are the kids. You lose your parents, you remain as a kid, you grow up as an orphan. And anything that comes to your mind is just something very negative about life. You never believe that there's a good part in life that you experience as a person. Even if you tell a child that there is school, you go study, you play football, you do something, the others don't even accept that. They just, all they do is cry and all that. So to put a solution to all this in our country, it's not too hard on my side. I've gone to very many places, in Pibor, in Bor, Wau, Rank. I went to very many places. All I saw was when you deal with someone who is traumatized as a concerned person, the first thing you need to know is the source of trauma, what happened to them. And then if you can solve that problem from where it all started, you can be able to put that person in a new kind of life. So the point is, if we are to deal with trauma, it's not about campaigns and calling public rallies and talking about trauma. We need to deal with individuals one after the other, asking them about why are they traumatized, what happened to them. Once we know what happened to them, we can be able to solve the problems and they will be better people. That's all I wanted to contribute, because Junior Dow has raised his hand and is going to also, I have to give chance to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Scholl. We really appreciate your insight and input. So I would like to ask Madam Mrs. Jacqueline to come in to ask her question, and then Agnet, if you want to add something or you want to contribute into something, you can come in later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Adeng. And thank you so much, Ms. Agnet. I really enjoyed your remarks and presentation on trauma healing. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Hakim. I'm joining in from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I am a human rights lawyer by profession. And I know that humanitarian crisis and conflict exacerbate the risk that women can face, and that includes sexual gender-based violence and assault and all that. That being said, and South Sudan is, is already, South Sudanese women are already experiencing a lot of that resulting to trauma. So that being said, Ms. Agnes, do you have any collective data on the number of women, South Sudanese women to be exact, of who have sought trauma healing as a result of the things that they have faced? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for your questions and the work that you're doing. So I don't know about the numbers of people who have sought trauma healing following sexual violence. I've worked with women. I work with women in my organization, the Roots Project, and of course, those issues of sexual violence also. Through some training. We've been through 2 big trainings with the women from the Roots Project, and it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem compounded with stigma and the discrimination and also the cultural implications of rape and other forms of sexual violence. So in my experience with mind-body medicine is that it is healing. It is healing to be in a group. So I just wanted to explain to you how we do it in this work, and also just to respond also to the comments earlier by Chol about about the issues of sexual violence, kids who are dealing with trauma. Is so previously, before COVID-19, we were planning as the Center for Mind-Body Medicine to do a nationwide program for South Sudan to deal with population-wide trauma. And this is what Center for Mind-Body does. We focus on population-wide trauma reduction. So this is trauma caused by conflict or natural disasters. They work in other places, also like in Gaza. They have been to, done trainings with Syrian refugees in Jordan and other places. In the US, they also deal with communities dealing with school shootings and other mass shootings. So it's a model to deal with population-wide trauma. Unfortunately, we have the situation that we have right now, which has made everything a little bit challenging. We're still looking to do it online, still looking to do sort of radio programs to help people know that they're not alone. People need to know that they're not alone. People need to know that it is, a natural reaction that they're going through, and to know all the tools that they need to know about how they can heal. And I've heard so many stories because we were also planning on working with Ministry of Education on the trauma work. We also heard of the many children who've been affected by this conflict and are refusing to go to school or refusing to participate or refusing to be engaged. And these are all the things that that we have to deal with. So as we had planned, what we were going to do was train 1,000 people from Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and civil society and other parts of the service providers to learn how to be trainers of mind-body medicine. We were aiming to reach about 300,000 people through the trainings in different fields, but mainly trainer of trainers, and have 1,000 people who are able to train fully, as well as 100 people who make a faculty within South Sudan to deal with the trauma that works. We do this program in 5 days as the first program to deal with your own issues, because in order to work, you have to deal with the things that you're dealing with. I mean, we're all people and we all have issues, whether it's from a younger age, older, or whatever. This is a practice to learn how to deal with stress. And I like to emphasize that because it's something that's always coming. We always need to understand that it'll come in a wave, just like our emotions are supposed to, flow like a river. Issues and traumas and events and stresses will come also in waves. So this is what we have to kind of, look at the situation. So in this 5 days, we deal with the biology of trauma, the biology of stress, what is actually physically going on in your body, why your heart rate is beating fast, why you're breathing shallow, why your stomach hurts, why you're feeling tired, all of these things. And you're feeling that because your body is getting ready to run or to fight or to freeze. And to freeze is when there's nothing you can do, when you're in a car accident or in a bomb or in a situation that you just can't move. So we do this, and then we do groups, 8 groups, where we bring a room full of maybe 200 people, break them down into smaller groups where you actually do the work. You do the work of learning more, and you do the work of experiencing the self-care techniques. And in that, you're also processing, but we process in a group. And so this is the importance also of community and connection, is that firstly, we're in this together and we're all learning from each other and we're able to learn. No experience is less or more than the other. It's just an experience that we have. And trauma healing also, one thing that I wanted to mention was that it's not, right, a heal all thing. It will come and go, as I mentioned. And so therefore it's, it's something that we always need to bring. So we teach like a menu of techniques, from breathing to movement to intuition things like using your imagination, using, tapping into your inner wisdom to know what it is that you have to do, because in any problem, you have the solution within yourself. We do genograms, which is mapping out your family tree and finding out where the traumas could be. For instance, where the patterns that you want to keep are, and where the patterns that you want to break are. And also for you to be able to connect also with your ancestors and find an answer. Think about your ancestors, think about the problems and tribulations that they've been through, and you may find an answer there that can help you in your life. We do autogenics, where you kind of really bring your body to relaxation and notice that you're able to control your breathing, you're able to control your heart rate, you're able to control your blood pressure through these techniques, through breathing technique, through movement, through mindful behavior, being, that you're angry and try and find a solution that will bring you peace. So that's how we try to do trauma healing. I hope that we'll have the opportunity over the next few months to be able to do something for South Sudan, because it's needed everywhere. It's needed everywhere, and it's our huge burden that contributes to everything.
Okay, thank you so much, Anyet. And then I just picked something from the answer and the insight and input, that checking your family tree. We have to also check our family tree, what will be the issue of stress, and also what will be the causes of many kind of trauma that we're having. So I also want to say that also we have to allow ourselves to heal, and we have to allow ourselves to go through the process of healing and so on. I have a question from Boy. She said, how can someone with trauma help themselves if they're not willing to seek for help from others? And then there's another question. I'm putting the two questions together because we are almost approaching the ending time. So there's another question. How do you identify someone who's living with trauma? This is the two questions. How can someone with trauma help themselves if they're not willing to seek for help? And also, how do you identify someone who's living with trauma? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. So how can someone living with trauma help themselves? Some of the things that I mentioned could be of help. I find that when people are dealing with so much trauma that they're too anxious to even sit down and breathe, for instance, that movement is the most powerful. Shake your body. Shake, 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 shake. You could even do it and you feel it. You feel the stress leaving. So this is one of the most important things. That's why I would really, I would find it really inspirational and amazing if people in families, in households in Juba, at night, every evening, everyone's back home, to be outside and spend 10 minutes shaking, and then you dance to a music of your choice, something uplifting, something, joyful. Not because, I know we're dealing with a lot of sadness at the moment, not because of joy, but because of wellness, to be well. And also for a little bit of joy, in a time when, when there are things that we cannot help. So movement every day, shaking in your room or wherever, can really help shift the body. And then breathing. So when you're moving, you should breathe. Always be conscious of your breath, If you're sitting there, if you notice people, I notice people all the time in the way they breathe, you know, just to have an understanding of what, you know, what may be happening. But if you notice how people breathe also, you know, you can notice also for yourself that I'm also breathing shallow. And to identify someone who is dealing with trauma is also that, you know, you would notice that people who are dealing with trauma or anxiety, you know, you're galgan, you're just always, you can't rest, you can't settle, you're looking over your shoulder, you're easily startled, lack of sleep, just stuckness in a mood, you know, like always sad, always angry, or always, you know, just fearful, you know, full of fear, and everything is scary, and everything, you know, they don't want to do anything, they're withdrawn, people's, you know, closing yourself in your room. And I know that many people are dealing with that, you know, people walk in and just go straight, and you don't want to talk to anybody, you know, lack of appetite, a complete change in the person's personality, mood, behavior, you know, in children, as Cho had mentioned, withdrawal, you know, you just withdrawn, you don't want to do anything. You used to be a good student, now you can't, you don't even care. You know, these are all symptoms of that. And, you know, there's, I just wanted to share just some behavioral things that you can kind of notice based on, like, behaviorally. So you'd have someone more irritated, withdrawn, moody, you know, lack of sleep, nightmares, poor appetite, very vigilant, isolating. The spiritual injury, you know, is you don't care. Indifference, lack of, you know, lack of meaning in your life, lack of drive, lack of, you know, no will, hopelessness. You start to question, what's the point of life? Why am I even alive? You know, this is the spiritual injury. And the body, you know, in your body, sweating, excessive sweating, rapid heart rate, breathing is shallow, fast, or it just feels like you never get the breath. Aches and pains, headache, your immune system goes down. You know, sometimes you can just get a little spot and it turns into an infection. You get, you know, just something very, very normal and very simple, basically affects. Low energy, low mood, all of these, exhaustion. I used to suffer from a lot of exhaustion before I had dealt with my trauma, is just fatigue. So these are some of the things that you can notice, you know, to know if someone is going through something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnet. We are approaching the end. I would like to just pick some points from Facebook, because I've shared the discussion online. So as you said, so through spiritual injury, we don't talk about it often, how much it has been passed on through generations too. We have suffered so much trauma as a people. This is from Adil. And then from a lady called Abak, she said, thanks everyone, okay, for recording and bringing up such important topic. I would like to add one point, which is collecting data of all traumatized people in our country and how to intervene by helping them to get healed, which is, I think, something that as an expert like Agnet, you will be able, I mean, it will help on to bring the solution in the country, because we are facing severe trauma that is happening and we need to be healed, especially like we can say, okay, people who has been in conflict, the most people who are traumatized, we can talk about other people, but we have to also see at our personal life, whether we are traumatized during the, I mean, as the situation we are passing through as well, at this COVID-19, also in the family and issues that is happening, sexual gender-based violence, GBV, all these issues that are taking place in the country or also in our personal life, we also have to identify ourselves if we are traumatized or not. So I would like to thank everyone for attending. We have almost clicked 1 hour. I would like to say thank you so much, Agnès, and I would like to ask you if you can contribute or recommend or advise us on what we can do about the trauma and how we should heal ourselves, and what will be your intake or your advice for all of us on how to go on with this COVID-19 currently. And it will really help us. So thank you so much. You can come in.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. I wanted to touch upon something that I think you was asking, or about generational trauma. And I really want to mention that because of our experiences of trauma, not just from us, but our grandparents and great-grandparents. So we're talking about, you know, civil wars as well as small community wars. And, you know, so the epigenetics of trauma, we can experience, some of our genes get turned on or off. And this can be passed down from our grandparents to us, even if we're not even conceived. You know, and that means basically that we're more susceptible to stress, we're more susceptible to trauma. This is also the importance of breaking the cycle, because it's not just now. So the anger that people feel, and they're just like want to finish everything now and want to punish people now, this has effects on our children. It has effects on our grandchildren, yet unborn. So again, also, this is something that we can try to deal with by working and, you know, raising this awareness. So the first thing, always awareness about trauma. And I think that we're getting that as a community in South Sudan. We're beginning to understand that the role of trauma, and globally we're beginning to understand that trauma is something that does come, that we are expecting it to come, and that we need to deal with. Of course, the lifestyles we lead do not help us in coping. And on top of that, you have this COVID-19 and all of that. I'm here available to support, you know, people through trauma and issues. I hold groups online to, you know, for about 10 people to be able to go through a whole process of you know, 8 sessions of trauma, where trauma healing, where you learn about breathing and movement and all the different skills one can learn to be able to heal themselves. And also, you know, the Center for Mind Body website is there. There's a lot of groups also that are running that anyone can join. There are also, you know, webinars that you can learn more from my teachers. And I just wanted to emphasize that we are hardwired to heal. Our bodies are meant to heal. We're meant to go through the trauma and to heal. So that hope in itself, you know, can be something that we emerge from. We emerge from the fact that we are not stuck in this situation. We can transcend. We can move forward, and we need to break the patterns, because this pattern is not just from us. It's from our forefathers, our foremothers, and it's also to the future. So this is how important it is. Did I forget anything else?
I don't think so, unless you want to add more points, but I would like to say that thank you for giving us the platform, like for, what is it called? The Center for Body Mind Medicine. You can share it with me and then I will share it with everybody. And thank you for offering the help for 10 people. And I will be glad to talk to you after that and see what we can do. And if you want to add anything, feel free before we close.
Adeng, I don't know, am I able to add something before?
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Is it okay for her to add anything? Is it okay?
Yeah,
is it
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go on, Alex.
Please do.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Adeng, for this platform. And thank you, Anyet, for your insight and all the comments and everything is good. I just wanted to add, one, I want to share my personal experience of what happened to me actually 13 years ago. I lost my sister and it was a shock for me. It was my elder sister. So I went through all this emotional, problems, and I actually ended up having a depression. So for me, first I was in denial because I thought this is, I'm not having this actually, because I had all these signs of withdrawal. I had nightmares. I used to, get up sleepless nights and all of this, but I was in denial and I didn't realize that. But at the end, I had to go to a doctor so that they told me that I have depression and I have to be, treated from depression. So this one, I learned that, even though when we go through trauma, we don't realize that this is actually a problem. This is the first thing, to actually identify a trauma as a problem and that you need to address that problem. So one of the things also I wanted to share is also when you reach a point in trauma that also you need medical attention. You might need medical attention when you have a trauma. So this is one of the things. The other things that I think you didn't mention, part of the trauma of the people that are having trauma is also those who are in prison, because when they are released from the prison, they might have been affected in the prison or subjected to certain, either violence or emotional effects, So I want you also to have, even if you can have a point on that, how we can help those people who come out of prison and how we can approach them so that they cannot be traumatized after coming out of prison from the things that they have seen in the prison or the lockdown that they have been in prison for that period. I'm sorry if I took a long time, but if you can shed, add to that point of seeking medical attention when you have like more trauma, and also those who are coming out of prison. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your intervention and for sharing your experience. And I would like, before we come to Anyet, I don't know, Anyet, can you answer the question that you asked? Is it okay?
Yeah, I can answer it.
Okay, I have another question that I want to add. I just got it on my email. A lady called Afra, she said, just 1 minute, sorry. She said, how do children react to emotional and psychological trauma? I think this is another question. How do children react to emotional and psychological trauma? And she has a lot of questions, but I will send you through an email if you can help her by answering. She has a lot of important questions. So I will just send the emails through the email for you to answer it. Thank you.
Okay. Alec, thank you for sharing your story. And sorry for your loss. So it's true that, a lot of people don't seek the help, don't get the help that they need for a long time. And obviously it leads to besides the chronic illnesses that it can lead to, it can also lead to extreme mental illness, whether it's depression, to suicidal thoughts, and just being unable to cope with life, or just to be an active participant. And this is a huge problem. I mean, in South Sudan, this is also how I started with following people suffering from mental illness, being put in prisons because there's no facilities for them. I believe that, of course, complementary medicine, which is what we're doing here, and conventional medicine, especially with dealing with extreme cases of trauma, may be needed, may be needed as an intervention. I very much believe in this power to heal. I believe that, with the right environment, with the right intervention, that we can move from, from that need, from medical intervention to actually understanding what it is that our bodies are going through, because that is not necessarily an illness, but rather just an ignorance that we're living in. And we let things compound itself, of course, like we have accumulated trauma from so many different things. And then one thing happened and it just throws everything else off, like it knocks you out completely. So we have to have that awareness. In terms of people, prisoners also coming out, being released, and it's terrible. We don't have any system for anybody. People coming from the military, people coming from war. I think this is why we have the problems that we have, because we had people, a huge number of people who had been through an experience that is so unnatural, like conflict, and then for such a long period of time, and then straight away come into living the normal life. There is no transition, there is no ceremony, there's no ritual, there's no acknowledgement, there's no space for people to share what they're going through. And this was a problem. This is a problem. So we need to be able to do it on all of those levels, people who are being, imprisoned. And I also, as part of my work, I went to a lot of prisons around South Sudan. I went to a lot of detention centers, and we know what our legal system is like. People get arrested for nothing. People get put away for a long time. People get, put on death row without due process, without a lawyer. And, so there's so many things that, that happen that can, of course, cause trauma. And we need to be able to be there to have these interventions. And so for what we had planned for a population-wide trauma is to have those right people trained in the military, the police, education, healthcare, to be able to be this net so that we can support our community and society everywhere they are. And about the children and trauma, sadly, children who experience trauma suffer a lot. It has a huge impact because their brains are not even developed yet. They're not completely developed. So some things end up becoming sort of like habitual or patterns. Your brain is not developed properly, and an emotion, an event comes, it causes trauma, this injury to the mind, to the body, to the spirit, and it turns into a lifelong struggle, to make meaning out of life. And these are the challenges. This is why this is so important, because what we're doing right now affects into the generations, into our unborn children. And we have that responsibility. We have that knowledge, and we have that responsibility now to make sure that we are also not going to be contributing to the things that our children and grandchildren are going to be living with. So this is why it's also important for children to go through this. We do this program for children as young as 3 years old, and really is to reinforce what they already know. We keep telling children, stop running around, stop playing, stop doing this. That's how they cope. That's how they cope. And so because it was also done to us, it becomes part of the habit. We're doing it mindlessly. But it's taking away the child's coping mechanism. So when we do this, you know, breathing with the children is so important. Like if a child is having nightmares, they're having either withdrawal, just to be with them and just to say, okay, let's breathe. And if they say no, they don't want to breathe, even if you breathe, that energy goes to them and they also start to breathe with you. So breathe slowly, deeply into the belly, slowly out through the mouth. And within minutes, a child would be sleepy. If it's hard to get them to breathe, let them blow on something, you know, light a candle and say, blow on it, you know, every now and then, so that they can take a deep breath and exhale. And so their bodies come back to homeostasis. And then they also, again, their brain relearns to be more relaxed than stressed. So I'm looking forward to all the other questions that Afra has. I hope that answers some of the questions that were asked.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope it answers your question, Alec, and I will be sending you the emails with the questions. And we have one last question, and then we close. It seems like the discussion is really important, and people are going through a lot. I've been noting like every minute, so many things.
Thank you so much, Anyet. I think we have a question from James.
Sorry, I think there's a, can you guys hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me? Is it clear?
I can hear you.
Okay. Because I had a, sorry.
Mr. James Taban has a question for you, Miss Anyet.
Yeah, okay.
And he's asking what kind of treatment is effective to traumatized women who still live in violence-prone setting, like the recent cases in South Sudan of women being raped, and what can be done at international level.
Yeah, and yet you can answer the question. Yeah, this is the same question that I wanted to tell you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, James. So the treatments that can be done are just as I'm mentioning. Community, you know, one of the easiest things, not easiest, but one way of dealing with women suffering from trauma is to bring more of them together. You know, it's definitely healing to know that you're not the only one, first of all. It's also healing to know that it's healing to share, the sharing itself. It's just that part of the human connection, to connect, you know, because also when we get through trauma, we also become indifferent. Yeah, we become indifferent to other people suffering. It becomes all very internal. So it's an opportunity to share and reconnect with people again. And it could be reconnecting with people because you have a similar experience, but all in all, it's a healing experience. So for women to come together as people who suffered from the same thing, and we could do this on a number of levels, number of issues, people who have, you know, lost family to conflict, people who are dealing with sexual violence, people who have any number of issues, to bring people together, because trauma really isolates you. It isolates you in every way. So as I mentioned before, the women that I work with at the Roots Project have also experienced, you know, sexual violence. They've, you know, people from their family, if it's not them personally. And the reason that this little organization working on beadwork in South Sudan has been able to stay together, even in a conflict, because they're women from different tribes and communities, is that because they really have a place where they can share with each other. And it just gives that sisterhood. So there's also a hormone that gets, just like as a mother and a child, as a mother taking care of a child, you know, certain hormones are released for them to be caregivers and caring and to be able to connect and to empathize with the child as if, you know, like in the way that it happens. So the connection with people is very important. I would definitely suggest that. The second thing is, again, movement. Move your body, because stress gets trapped in the body. That's why you feel the things that you feel, you know? So if we move our bodies, we will be able to shift and shift and shift until it gets there. I also wanted to emphasize, I know that a lot of people focus on specific thing, and this is what I love about the mind-body model, is that it is a menu. You know, one day movement may not work for me, so I will breathe, or I will do an imagination, and you can imagine anything. It's just the power of your imagination. You know, a place that's safe, a place that's pleasant, a communication with someone that that you love, or a spirit that is in yourself as well. So, you know, we just need to be able to use all of these different techniques that will help us when they help us. Go outside, you know. Trauma makes you sit inside, stay in the dark, cover your head, go outside. It's one way of just helping your emotions move through your body as well. Breathing and that community. So those are really the, you know, without being able to teach you setting, those are the things that I really believe will help. And also, you know, because of working with trauma, working with women, working on issues of sexual violence, and there is a huge power also in bringing women together. Like the Women of the Roots Project, I don't bring them together to say, let's talk about tribalism, or let's talk about politics, or let's talk about sexual violence. We bring them together just to be together. And just that proximity provides the space for people to be able to share things. And unfortunately, there are not many spaces where women or children can do things like that. You know, in the absence of school, what does a child do? You know, in the absence of, you know, where do women sit together? In the absence of a funeral or a wedding, or, you know, where do women really and church, where do women congregate to sit together, to be able to work and also have the space to share experiences? So those are the things that I really would like to focus on, you know, community, movement, breathing, nature, and the knowledge that what you're going through is totally normal for the experiences that you had. And we need to always honor our pain, you know? So even as someone, I'm healing, everything is better, we still have pain, and it's okay to have pain. It's not so okay to have suffering, but it's okay to have pain. We need to have pain so that we are connected and we're alive. And those are the two differences, basically. And we also need to learn that in healing is also in breaking the cycle of violence, you know, and giving compassion, you know, like I really, you know, my work in human rights has been almost full circle, because I went through feeling, you know, like you're supposed to feel as a human rights defender is you're defending and you're doing the right thing and you're on the right side, you know, but those are feelings that alienate as well. Those are feelings that traumatize as well, because we're all human and we can be on either side of anything. And we have to take everything so that we can be true to complete healing. You know, we want to help the women, help the girls. We want to make sure this pattern stops. You know, so where is the beginning of this scenario? And it's in every moment. It's in every moment that presents itself that you have an opportunity to say, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to think. I'm going to breathe. And I'm going to make a different decision to the one that I made yesterday or earlier or last year or when presented with similar situation. So Thank you.
Thank you, Anyet. We are now coming to closing. Thank you so much, dear participant, for attending this very useful discussion. And also, I hope it really helped you. And we look forward to see you next Saturday for another discussion that I will be sharing Facebook and through your email, and also sending more information about the next discussion and so on. So I would like to say that I would like to share a quote, a very short quote, saying that your trauma is not your fault, but your trauma is your trauma is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. So I would like to say that, yeah, you might have passed through a trauma that is not something that is unexpected or something that is not your fault, but also your healing. Allow yourself to heal, and also use the techniques that Ms. Anyet has shared, and seek help, talk about it, and try and learn from other people who has passed through the same. We are different people, we pass through different trauma, but in terms of healing, we can find a solution, I'm sure about it. So thank you so much and thank you, Ms. Anyet, and thank you, everybody. And see you again next week. I will be sharing the next discussion. So thank you so much for people even who are live on Facebook. Thank you so much for your questions and for your contributions, and for the question that had not been answered. I will be glad to ask Ms. Anyet to answer those questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you very much.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.